And welcome back, everyone, to Get the Mic, the only show where your hosts on the left, Owl,
And your host on the right, Brock.
dissect the mythological significance of fiction. In this episode, we're going over Blue, Black, and Blue, episode 50 of Dragon Ball? No, 53 of Dragon Ball. I keep doing it. I'm going to keep doing it all the time. 53 of Dragon Ball, in which Blue and Goku finally square off after much build up. Of course, Bluma is there. She has utterly failed to contend with Blue on her own, and so Goku must come and save the day. Krillin's also there. Well, let's go ahead and get started.
Yeah, let's jump right into it.
Oh my, that is not what I meant to do. There we go. So, the first thing we see is that after Krillin, it's kind of a recap, but after Krillin and Bulma solve all of the pirates' traps, revealing the treasure to appear from the mouth of the statue. Um, sorry, I shouldn't have said after they do that, but Blue is there to stop them as he fights and bests Krillin. Only after a few bouts, Krillin is able to hold his own for the most part until Blue uses his ultimate technique, which we began talking about last time, and we'll complete our analysis of this time.
Right.
But he almost kills Krillin, and Goku is able to arrive just in time to stop Blue, and the two of them are about to clash. It's kind of where we left off. This episode is also in the Japanese called The Eyes That Strike Terror. Wait, what was it?
The eyes that sparkle with terror.
Sparkle with Terror, yes. I think it's a really apt name. It just didn't really fit too well with the thumbnail.
Yeah, the last episode as well, I can't remember what it was, but we're getting these long, drawn out definitions of exactly what's happening mythologically, but they don't roll off the tongue very well.
I'm sure they do in Japanese.
Yeah.
But anyways, point being, the name is poignant because of the specific technique that Blue has been using, right? It is that terror. That sparkle is that knowledge, that orderliness, that disgust, and the terror is what follows with the resolution of what that spirit can enact.
Right. I think it's representative also of that ruling by terror that he does within his own unit, right? Where everyone is just terrified of slipping up or doing anything wrong because to him, any disorderliness is an executable offense. So it is a reign of terror.
Right, exactly. And to discover that his spirit can cause a reign of terror.
Right.
Because he's not one you would think. He's not a monster. He's not like whipping his subordinates.
Right.
We first see him appreciating a rose, right? Like the knowledge that this spirit in particular can cause a reign of terror that tyrannical is the shocking part of his gaze attack.
That's a good way of putting it, yeah.
And so then, that's right. So then Goku steps in. But before the fight starts, Bulma tries to distract Blue. She says, "Look over there, pandas, something about pandas." And only Goku looks. Because and this is something Bulma should know, is that Goku is less aware of the duplicity of being than Blue is. Blue's not going to fall for that. And so when she points away, Blue is able to kick him pretty good. And after a strong hit from Blue, he gets back up and they finally begin to fight properly. Where it seems that Goku is more than a match for Blue. He kicks him in the face. He like goes spinning, and it's funny in the Japanese. He says, "How dare you strike my pink cheeks?"
Oh yeah, he's like, "You've darkened my cheeks," or something like that.
Something like that.
So yeah, Goku claps those cheeks.
Definitely. So he easily beats Blue in the first little clash here, despite Bulma's her low IQ intervention.
I like the way that they use it because this is a representation of that failure of attentiveness that we saw symbolized in the paths in the last episode, right? Where Bulma has not learned the lesson because she doesn't see that that attentiveness isn't there. And so, of course, this is the one loss that Goku takes in the beginning of this fight, is playing that back out again.
Right. And again, it's Bulma's kind of the cause of it. So,
Hmm.
um, yes. And so he easily beats Blue, and Krillin even comments that Goku is stronger than he was during the tournament. And that's kind of what we were saying earlier, is the more a person can interface with the unknown and bring valuable knowledge out of it, the stronger that spirit will become. And so Goku, having interacted, because Krillin has not interacted with Silver the soldier or White the thug, right? He already was beaten up by Blue, which I don't want to say Blue the disgusted, but something like that.
Hmm.
The orderly. But so uh Goku pretty much wins that first round. And so obviously Blue's going to have to do something drastic.
And of course, Blue does it the same way that he does against Krillin, right? His reaction to having his appearance damaged is
Mhm.
that he does this, right?
Right. And he realizes, he uses this ultimate technique to paralyze Goku just the same way he did Krillin. And it is that idea that too much orderliness is a bad thing.
Right.
I think that's actually kind of what we can say if we can distill that down.
It is the danger of tyranny within orderliness, right?
Yeah, definitely. The tendency for too much order to be this way, right? And that shock, right, that there's a middle path, right? That's what freezes Goku, especially down here, because he doesn't have the Nimbus to rely on.
Right. This is on the opposite end of the world of the Nimbus.
Yes. And so Goku's paralyzed by it. And after kicking Goku about, Blue realizes that he needs to finish this quickly because some of the ceiling is starting to crumble. So he decides to pull out a capsule, clicks it, pulls out a shotgun, and points it at Goku, having basically defeated Goku. The heroic spirit defeated by too much orderliness, right? Suffocated by the, maybe not suffocated, terrorized by the idea of this spirit and what it entails, really, what it entails.
It's a bit different from how he treats Krillin in the same situation. With Krillin, he grabs a rock and goes to smash his head. With Goku, instead of doing that, he manifests a much more potent form of that malice, right? So he gets a gun to kill Goku.
And it also shows that the orderliness and the tyrannical orderliness can manipulate the societal technological innovation that is instantiated with the capsules, and he is able to call forth malice from it.
To threaten the hero.
Hmm. Which does threaten the hero. This is akin to, uh, you know, reformers like Roman, or even, let's say, people who might have wanted to reform Germany. Those people getting exposed to the most extreme forms of malice for their heroic spirit.
Right.
And that even makes Blue a further greater adversary. And he's way beyond White. Like, he is easily able to contend with Goku on somewhat of an even level, using this ability and enacting his spirit, putting it forward, like you said, is when he drifts towards that unrealized self, is whenever he can tap into this ability, right? His self consciousness and his knowledge that he is weak. He manifests his spirit stronger forward, and so that he can shock Goku and Krillin.
I also want to point out sort of a dichotomy between holy and unholy weapons, right? Because he's wielding a malice, like an unholy form of that aggression. But we saw in the last episode the blessed swords coming from the large statue and that were
Yeah,
glimmering and glowing. And I think that that's saying that it's basically just a physical manifestation of that. That what he wields is not, it's not blessed by that spirit, right? It creates negative effects in the world.
like the destruction of the heroic spirit. Heroic
Exactly.
spirit. And so he points it at Goku, and wait, did I just change it? With Blue towering over Goku, he leverages that position so that he can convince Bulma to tell him about the location of the Dragon Ball. He still doesn't know because he doesn't have the radar. He was counting on them to find it. So Bulma agrees. She tells him where it is and says, please just don't kill Goku. Not learning another lesson.
Nope.
We already learned this. That he's remember the in the last episode, he said she's pleading for Krillin and she says, don't kill Krillin because I'll tell you where the Dragon Ball is. And he says, I'll kill you anyway.
Well, she says, I'll give you the Dragon Balls we already have.
Yes.
And he says, I'll just take those anyway.
Right.
So then escalating it further, well, then I can tell you the path to get to the next Dragon Ball, right? So it's interesting how none of it works with Bulma. She is utterly helpless against Blue on her own.
Right.
He doesn't care about anything she has to offer.
Well, and that's to say that the authoritarian nature that Blue has, he doesn't really care about the individual female spirit, even with her flaws, especially
he
because
reviles his own femininity in a way,
Yeah.
right?
yes. Well, he's almost purely a logos, almost a corrupted logos,
Right.
Mode, and so yeah, I mean that exactly. He does revile that part of himself. Hold on.
Right. I think that is it's interesting that he does recognize though that that feminine spirit does need to guide him to the next that
It might still. Oh, there we go. Yours is back. Mine is
Okay.
back. All right,
Oh
we're back.
man, are we blowing out? No, it looks normal now. What in the world happened?
We don't. I hope we didn't start blowing out because that would be bad. Sorry, what were you saying?
I think that it's interesting still though. He reviles his own femininity in that sense because it's a sort of disorderliness. He has to rely on it ultimately to tell him where the wisdom is. He
Well,
knows that
and
he
that's
has
to
to ask
say, like
Bulma.
think about a tyrannical society. Does that care or allow the free expression of femininity?
No.
It suppresses it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so,
But it still needs it
to find the Dragon
because
Ball,
without
right,
it, there is no wisdom to be gained.
right, without interfacing with that. And yeah, Blue even recognizes that. He's a smart villain, one of the first we've seen in Dragon Ball. And so as wait, I was saying yes, so she reveals the Dragon Ball, and after they complete that bargain, Blue indicates what we knew all along, that he's going to kill Goku anyways. But before he can pull the trigger, a rat comes through and disgusts Blue so much that he can't use his not even that, his spirit has been debased in the eyes of Goku. He's no longer something that needs to be feared. Goku can also, as we've said in the past, overcome these obstacles, encountering them a second time after in engaging with them truthfully. That second time he is able to overcome them. And so in this, we see that the rat breaks his concentration, and so Blue drops his spirit. He's no longer able to enact his spirit further into the world, such that it is that terrorizing spirit, right? This goes back to that what he's suppressing about the feminine side of his spirit, which comes out in this form because of the rat that he sees, which is a disgusting. It's like a. Oh yeah, I would say it's a disgusting stimulus, which
Well, I like that it's a
over it reveals the true spirit of Blue.
well, I like that it's also sort of the nature of Goku. Like he has his
Unclean,
tail,
unclean. He
right?
says.
Goku has that animal nature attached to him as well, and so that unclean, disorderly thing, we see that Blue is the opposite of that. So I would say it's almost symbolic of him not being able to wield his spirit over Goku whenever he becomes aware of Goku's nature. It's almost like, and Goku realizes, oh, he fears this. Well, I have that inside of me. Like I'm connected to my animalistic nature. Like I'm not orderly. I am of chaos. I am of like the wilderness of the
And
wild.
natural
Yeah. So his
occurrence,
connection
right?
to his natural mode of being, which is not being tyrannized, is the thing that makes it so that now it won't work on him anymore.
Right. I mean, he actually doesn't try to use it on Goku again, so we don't. I don't want to
He
go.
does.
I mean, he doesn't like. It's not like he does the animation for it, and Goku's able to resist
Right.
it. Goku cuts him off before he's able to do
Yeah.
it.
He goes to try to do it, but it obviously doesn't work on Goku because he's ahead of it, right?
Right, but this is what women. This is what a stereotypical woman would do if they saw a mouse, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it is that revelation of the true spirit that is being suppressed. And it if you think about it happening as well in the disgust of societies, right? It kind of shows that true spirit of well, I don't want to go too far into it. I don't want to have
Right.
to explain a whole society, but like I that the
It is that
thing
phenomenon from Nazi Germany, though. Right.
yeah, well, I would also say like what a society disgusts says a lot, and what Blue disgusts, which is the unclean, the unwashed, the chaotic, right?
Right.
He it forces him to bring forth those aspects of himself which are part of that true being he has, because there's that facade he puts on which allows him to use that ability, but then there's who he truly is, which is right. What does Krillin say? You homo,
Yeah.
you flaming homo.
It is the femininity that he tries to tyrannize, but he can't get rid of. Right.
Yeah. And it's also that, remember in the last episode, he refused to even acknowledge that. You said what shouldn't be said, right?
Right.
And so then, oh, I do also want to mention, oh, I forgot to write this down, that Bluma mentions she's a peachy gal.
Oh yeah.
She's so peachy that she can't die. And so really she hasn't learned too much.
I mean, that's calling back to our discussion about the robot as well, right? Where she thinks that her femininity grants her a status above that death spirit, right?
Mhm.
The inevitability of death. It's like she's still not truly internalizing the lessons that she needs to be able to gain this wisdom.
Yes. And so she, of course, is very focused on herself, where Krillin even mocks her for being that way. And once Goku is able to be free by the mouse, he uses the Jenkin technique to defeat Blue, first poking his eyes and then knocking him out cold.
It's that returning to that play. It's the leveling of the playing field again, where Goku says, "Well, then let's engage on fair terms."
No, no,
Right?
no. It's better than that.
Oh, really?
Because Goku realizes that his spirit, when he's enacting that spirit of tyranny and terror, he realizes that is a form of play, because Blue is not actually like that. He's now seen what Blue is actually supposed, or what Blue's actualized self is, right? And so since he realizes that's play, he can use play against him and knock him out with that revelation.
Right. His weakness being his eyes. Right. So the
Yes.
first thing he attacks with that play is his sight or his ability to be judgmental and to internalize his gaze as judgment. Right.
Well, and as a gaze, right, it is instantiating. it is putting forth oneself. And so Goku putting one even a projection of oneself, because that's kind of what Blue is doing with this attack. And um Goku poking his eyes in the form of plays, because that's not actually who Blue is. Blue has faults. Blue is not perfectly orderly. There are feminine aspects about him, and Goku pointing that out is what knocks him out. Let's say.
And whenever he hits him with the rock part of the Jenkin technique,
Yeah.
we see the splash screen of Blue floating in the air for a second with it's a blue background with pink flowing out of him,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's the thing that is his downfall, is that he thinks that his orderliness makes him more masculine than Goku, when in reality Goku being in touch with himself makes him more masculine than Blue is. And so the test of masculinity in the rock, right, in the punch, Blue fails completely, and that's why it's the final blow, and it knocks him unconscious.
There we go. Yeah. Yeah. And so as the cave is collapsing all around them, wait. Need to go there. As the cave begins to collapse, the statue also starts to crumble, and the center of it starts glowing, and it explodes, sending out treasure everywhere, all kinds of jewels and bracelets and necklaces.
And it's all in a rainbow shower.
Bulma runs towards it, but the destruction of this cave causes a massive fissure to appear in the ground. She falls in, but is able to climb up without falling to her death. And I mean, that's obviously the
It's a progression
go on.
in her character, where we saw when she fell into the
That's right.
into the earth before, right? She had to be caught by Goku
Yeah, that's
and
right.
then
That's
be
right.
saved by the Noibo. But in this case, they play it as a gag, but what happens is she's able to pull herself out of it this time. And I think that's symbolic of, maybe she hasn't fully internalized it, because if she had internalized the wisdom, she would have never fallen in. But at least she knows how to get herself back up out of
She's
this
gained
pitfall.
some things. Yeah. And she's starting to realize and be conscious of the mistakes she's making. It's all part of that. And so they accept that they'll need to flee the cave, but Goku asks Bulma where the Dragon Ball is so that he can go get it. And she tells him the same thing as Blue, that it's in that pool. And he goes off to go get the Dragon Ball and tells them that he'll catch up, basically telling them to find a way out, right? And so they run off to do that. Anything else here, really?
No, I really like how symbolic this failure in Bulma's character is. It's slapstick in that sense, where she immediately just plunges and they're like, "Oh god." And then she's okay.
What about the destruction of the statue? Because I think that is that not part of this this enlightenment that's just been produced not only on Blue but on Bulma, on Goku.
Well, I think it's symbolic of actually passing this test now.
Right,
The-
that's the real.
yeah.
That was the real part of it. The key, maybe not.
Right. It's definitely symbolic in that sense. It doesn't really have a logical way that it plays out, but things crumbling and falling apart and being destroyed here in this space keep on lining up with what's happening at the same time. So in this case, the facade of this thing explodes and all of the potential within it comes raining out around
In all the
around room.
brilliance,
Yeah.
right? All the hold on, I'm just gonna mute for a second.
It's not picking up. I don't think so. I've never heard it pick up. But we're talking about it now, so.
Well, I'll just get that anyways. So it also is the brilliance, like the what do I want to say? The enlightenment that is produced by these tests that they've overcome one at a time.
Right, and I think that's why it shows the full spectrum of light coming off of them, right?
Yeah, definitely, because it's representative of a lot of different things they've done. I mean, this has been quite an adventure down in this cave. So they have to run back as in Bulma and Krillin have to run back through the hallways as they crumble, and rocks fall upon their head, making a gag with their. They have like welts all over their
Hmm.
heads. Meanwhile, the Goku swims down to the bottom, and he does find the Dragon Ball after a corpse floats past him. He finds it in the mouth of a pirate's skull. And he pries it free and swims back to the surface after falling a couple times from some rocks. And so he's now attained the Dragon Ball. So what do you think about the place where the Dragon Ball is? Why
It's
is it here?
basically at the bottom of it's at the bottom of a pool that's at the bottom of a pool
This
that's at
is
the
the bottom
bottom
of
of
the
the
pool.
ocean.
Right, yeah.
It's basically this is kind of, you could say this is the floor at the deepest point, at the deepest darkest point here in the deepest darkest place that they can go to as far as confronting chaos. He finds it lodged in a visage of death itself, right? And he has to bring it back up to the surface.
Meaning that enlightenment is brought about by interfacing with that death spirit, which we saw Goku already do. And anyone that would have got this far in the pirate's dungeon would have been able to do that, because the robot really is an instantiation of that, and the statue and all the traps we've seen. So Goku's able to get it, and he swims back up.
Well, I think that's why we see the skeleton floating up past him when he's going down. I think this is symbolic of accepting the potential of dying in the pursuit of this enlightenment. And so he sees an example of what could be someone who tried to get the Dragon Ball down here and died, and then still continues down. And then it's difficult for him to pry it loose from that still. It has to be a test to him where and it we see that he's struggling and he's looks like he's about to drown basically. Then he
Mm-hmm.
scrambles up to the top and you see he's gasping for air when he gets to the top. So I think it's because it needs to be that test, right? He has to be on the edge of death.
Yeah, definitely. And he has to exert himself down in the chaos. He has to instantiate his being in the chaos such that he can grip the enlightenment from the jaws of death.
Yes.
Literally the jaws of death.
He literally pries it free.
Yes. And yeah, I think that's good for there. So, meanwhile, the Goku gets back to the main port and finds a pirate submarine only after finding that the hallway is now blocked. And Krillin wonders aloud where Goku is. We see Goku searching for the mouse that saved him, saying obviously that he owes the mouse his life. So he puts him in his mouth after he finds him. He looks at in a few different places, and it's one thing I wanted to point out for Brock as well is that he does look inside the blue chest, but we don't see what's inside the blue chest. It's kind
Right.
of just moved on.
If it were to represent that Dharma aspect of the three treasures, it would be interesting that the only person who looks in it is Goku, sort of the purely good character in the story, and we don't see any of our more flawed, fallen type characters interface with it, right?
Sure, yeah. And I mean, it's barely an interface, but at least it
Yeah,
acknowledges
an
its
acknowledgement of
existence.
it
Yeah,
because they don't even look at it.
I
Really,
know. And so yeah, Goku puts Mouse into his mouth and dives down to swim across the long tunnel to get back to the main harbor in the underground cave. Let me see. Krillin wondering about where Goku is. I think the concern for Goku is much greater than in Krillin than Bulma, and it's to say that as Krillin is acting like that oolong figure, it's almost as if Bulma should recognize Goku's value and that he shouldn't be left behind, even before we see her do anything like that.
yeah, it's kind of to say that that you don't want to betray the heroic spirit in an act of self-preservation. You want to stay heroic even in the face of total danger, right? And so Krillin's saying, well, shouldn't we keep respecting that since it's saved us all along?
Ooh, and one other thing I want to say too is that Goku finds the mouse amongst all the treasure, and instead of picking up any of the treasure, he picks up the mouse, right? And it's that willingness and that uncleanly, chaotic nature, willing to get one's hands dirty and actually do the deeds that need to be done. Because if you know, also, I mean, Blue had his soldiers execute each other. He never did any of that. He never even would look at it,
Right.
right?
He would not get his hands dirty.
Right, and that's another aspect of it. And Goku is showing that that is worth it and it's worth preserving to keep that idea alive.
It's for the sake of being, right? It's any creature, however big or small, should be treated with that reverence for being. Whereas that's not something Blue can do. Even the best of his soldiers, if he errs, he exterminates him.
Right, exactly. And so Blue does actually wake up. He wakes up from the interface with Goku and he sees that the rock wall of the cave has crumbled to reveal a massive amount of treasure, dead pirates on their thrones, glimmering cups, goblets, jewels, you name it, swords. So he picks up a glimmering sword, proclaiming that this treasure is now his.
He holds it up above his head and it shows beams of light spinning off of it.
And then the ceiling starts to fall on top of him, and we don't see Blue again for a little bit.
I like also, right as he wakes up, we see that the rock wall behind him is glowing the same way that the statue was, to show that this is his enlightenment. And the enlightenment being kind of what I mentioned, where he's not fit to wield that holy weapon.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have the blessing from the feminine
But
spirit
he thinks
because
he does.
because he tyrannizes it,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. And so, he gets his collapsing, his dreams collapse upon him.
Right.
And then we go back to Goku, who's sprinting down the hallway, trying to get back to the main chamber as fast as possible because Bulma's about to leave, saying that Goku will live. It's fine, and that the most important thing to her is saving her own life. Krillin, being both honest but more reverent towards Goku's spirit, blushes as he says that he would also like to live, right?
He begrudgingly agrees with that sentiment that at the end of the day you do need to survive.
But he also is still pretty insistent on them not leaving for as long as they can. So we'll see how that plays out because this is the end of the episode. Will Goku make it to the sub, or will he have to find his own way out with Little Mouse? I think this episode is really on top of it as far as having us see the level of spirit now that can contend with Goku. And it doesn't have to be one that's purely physically instantiated, right? Because Blue uses his own spirit as a weapon. And we see that later on iterated. We've only ever seen the Kamehameha as an energy attack, but very soon we're going to see another instantiation of one's spirit in the form of an attack. And it'll be more impactful than simply the knowledge that disgust can lead to suffering and chaos.
Yes.
I think that's a good place to leave off.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, if you liked what you heard, please give us a subscribe. Watch us on Rumble. We upload frequently, but we're about to go on a little bit of not a hiatus, but we're gonna just slow down for a couple weeks, and then we'll be back up full steam.
Yeah, going into the holidays, it's just going to be difficult to record as consistently.
Definitely. There's all kinds of busyness. I'm sure you guys all understand. But if you want to talk about it in the comments, please, we'd love to know what you have to say.
Give us a rumble on Rumble.
Subscribe on Bumble.
Like us on YouTube. If you dislike us, you'll have to leave that comment because...
Yep, you can't see it. But we're also on BitChute.
Yes.
This has been fun. I'm your host on the left, Owl.
I'm your host on the right, Brock.
And we hope you guys all have a good evening.